Ojvadod Odarvi, and welcome to the world building stream. So a little background. Last week, I realized that what I really needed was some sort of a greeting, because I was like, hello, welcome, and it was dumb. I didn't feel good. So I was thinking, what would be a cool way to start the stream? And I thought, well, what is the dwarven greeting, right? How do you say hello? And I went to look it up, and I realized I had never come up with it. So it was my task this week to come up with how do you say hello and even goodbye in Dwarven. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit before we dive into the world building stream. So it's Ojvazod, which is Ozhvazod. Ojvazod. Hey, what's going on? Look at all these people. What's up, Castle Red Fox? It's often both timing and in striking. Oh, yeah, that third one? Yeah. That's funny. Welcome, everybody. Look at all these people. What's up, Castle Red Fox? Thanks for coming to the stream. But yeah, so the word is Ojvazod. Here you go. Ojvazod. And basically what it translates to, and I can go into the specifics of it, but hello is Ojvazod, and then goodbye is Kevazad. Is this one is farewell. And how they translate is that Ojvazod, Oj meaning basically like, it's kind of like right on the end of a word. If you were to say like, you're hungry, comma, right? Oj sort of is a syllable that is an interrogative. So Ojvazod roughly translates to, are you working? Are you, and then working, the vajod, you work. So when a dwarf wants to talk to another dwarf, they'll approach them and they'll ask the question, Ojvazod, like, are you working? What's going on? In reply, then, the dwarf will talk and they'll have their conversation. And then when that dwarf is ready to be done with the conversation, they will say Kevazad, which translates to I'm not working, not I work, right? So the idea is that it's essentially the dwarven version of working hard, hardly working, right? Back and forth, which I really liked that as that's the thing that they use to communicate with each other. They're always at some task, right? And any conversation they have is an interruption of that task. And I thought that was really fascinating. So that's what we're going to go with. We're going to go with Ojvazod, and then Odarvi, or Odvari, excuse me. Odvari is the other word. Odvari, which translates as dwarves. The I on the end is the plural, right? So Odarv is dwarf. Odvar, excuse me, is dwarf, and then Odvari is dwarves. Great. So if you've never come to a world building stream before, welcome. That was kind of a weird intro. Fast and the Furious is happening outside my window, as it always is on Sunday nights. And we basically spend a couple hours together and we build piece by piece the world of my upcoming podcast and campaign. The campaign that I will hope to run when the world reopens, called Helm Crown, which is sort of a dwarven intrigue political campaign, or like kingdom building campaign. It's sort of about what happens at the end of The Hobbit, right? It's what happens, how do you rebuild the dwarven kingdom from the ground up? And so one of the things we're going to do today, today's topic, we're talking about monsters of Khûm, which is the name of the kingdom. And we take a big list of monsters that already exist in D&D, things like trolls, or yeah, it's not a stream without Fast and Furious outside. Troglodytes or purple worms, gray oozes, myconids, things like that. And we sort of come up with how do they fit into the ecology and the history and the story of the world, but also in the history of Khûm in this kingdom. One of the fun projects that I did early on, we've done a couple of these streams now. One of the fun projects I did early on was I went through and I made a big list of all the monsters that appeared in every every product that listed like underground monsters or mountain monsters, and no matter how weird or obscure they were, I put them on this list. I wanted to find a place for every single thing. I think it's Keith Baker, the inventor of Eberron's phrase, who's if it exists, there's room for it in Eberron. And I kind of like that mentality for this world, for Ondune, which is the same world that our podcast is set in. So I have a big list of monsters here. I think you guys can see them pretty well. Let me double check that and make sure it's visible. Yeah, pretty good. So I want y'all to choose one of these monsters. I have the first 20 of them labeled because when I work on them on my own, I'll just roll. Right, so if you guys want to... oh, no, go for it, Christopher. That's cool. I want everyone to throw it out there. If y'all want to pick which monster we're going to start with, we'll do a little kind of a breakdown of where they are in my world and how they fit in and all that kind of stuff. Please speak, Christopher. Don't feel like you need to be quiet. That's okay. We have our first 20 here, but you can pick any of the ones that are on there. So you guys read that list and throw out one that seems interesting. We're at the point now where I've picked most of the weird ones. There's a couple strange ones on there. Like, I don't know what a geonid is. I'd have to look it up. A lava child, I think I know what they are. Piercers are pretty strange. The chagrin, I don't really remember. I have no idea what a spitting crawler or a tear is. Winter Hag is kind of right there in the name. But I want y'all to look at that list and start throwing out names of monsters that you think would be cool. If I don't get one in the next 2 minutes, then we will. I'll roll for it. We got a lava child. Okay, that's cool. Let's hear a few more names before I'll make my decision about what it'll be. We feel passionate about lava child because they're really weird, if I remember correctly. I don't think magmen are in the monster manual, and I think that's the same thing. Let me look at the magmen. Speak now, throw them out there. We're gonna do lava child. Yeah, that's a great question, Jose. He wants a dwarven take on gargoyles. I think that's a really good one. Cool. Let's do Lava Child, and then I think we'll jump over to Gargoyles, and then if we have time, we'll talk about Rust Monster. Rust Monster I actually have figured out pretty well. I should maybe take it off the list, but I think it's good to do an official write-up. So let me look up the Magmen in here. I don't know if that's different looking at my monster manual. I don't know if a Magmen is different from a Lava Child. Let me see what they say. A grinning, mischievous magman resembles a stumpy humanoid sculpted from a black shell of magma. Even when it isn't ablaze and radiating heat like a bonfire, small jets of flame erupt from its porous skin. Oh, Vaughn says gargoyles too. Okay. So we'll start with the lava child, and then we'll jump in with the gargoyles. Welcome, Vaughn. They're fire elemental spirits bound into physical forms by magic. They appear in the material plane only when summoned. They view kindling as flammable objects as kindling for a grand conflagration. That's kind of cool. And only the magical control exerted by their summoners keeps them from setting everything they touch ablaze. Their propensity for fire and havoc makes them ideal for spreading chaos and destruction. So yeah, very chaotic. A mob of magmans summoned inside a castle can reduce it to a burning shell within minutes. Yikes. Let's see. So it doesn't immediately light anything. But the fires inside the magmans are capricious and unpredictable. Moreover, as simple elemental creations, they are oblivious to the harm their native element causes creatures in the material planes. Kind of interesting. It seeks out areas of great heat, such as forest fires or bubbling magma. At other times, a magman compulsively looses fire from its fingertips, delighting in setting objects ablaze. So they're just kind of little pyromaniacs. They're interesting because they do line up with how I do elementals in my setting. So elementals are all created magically, obviously, but like they're created sort of particularly by wizards, though other spellcasters can summon them. And they kind of come in tiers. There are Mephits are sort of your lower tier, and then you have your standard CR5 elementals. And then above that, you have Jinn. And the idea of Jinn is that rather than coming from another plane, they are basically elementals that achieve sentience. And were able to kind of shape themselves into whatever form they want. Which works too because Jinn historically really hate being bound or serving. So I kind of like that play. So my question here is that if that's what a Magman is, then how is that different from a Lava Child? And how is it different from a Mephit? So let me see if I can look up if there is any distinction with what a Lava Child is versus what a Magman is. Because the word Lava Child is so bizarre. Oh, I wonder if I have it. I have the Fiend Folio, the old school Fiend Folio. And I have an old monster manual. I kind of want to go look and see if the Lava Children are in there. I'm going to be right back. I'll be back in like 30 seconds with these old books. Because then we can look at the original text. Here, I'll be right back. Yeah, I've got 3. I've got the original AD&D Monster Manual, I've got the Monster Manual 2, and I've got the TSR Fiend Folio. So it's got to be in here somewhere. Yeah, the interesting question about gargoyles when we get there is that I already have like 4 different monsters that are like stone creatures. So what is a gargoyle that's different from any of those other things, right? Castle Red Fox suggests a like a guard dog. And that might be kind of interesting to play with, like, their intelligence, right? Maybe that's a component. Okay, so the original Monster Manual, 1978, I think, does not have the Lava Children in it. Let's look in Monster Manual 2. Because if I can get it for, like, right from the horse's mouth, that'd be pretty neat. Lava Child. Lava Child. Such a goofy name. I should go through these too, because I think there's probably some really weird monsters in here that I've never used. Lamprey. Land Lamprey. Okay, no Lava Child in here either. Interesting. Okay, we'll check the Fiend Folio. So maybe they're newer. I always thought that they were like really weird and old. But they must be newer than I was thinking. There's a Quaggoth in here. That's on my list too. Lizard King, Lamia Noble. Here we go, Lava Children. Boom. Okay. So here we go. Here is a Lava Child. Y'all can see that. Pretty weird looking. Okay, Lava Child. These humanoids are approximately the same size as a broadly built man. However, they have a curious, childlike appearance with pinkish white skin and a permanent smile on their faces. That's pretty spooky. They are the unnatural offspring of a union between spirits of earth and fire. Okay, yeah. In a fight, they fight with clawed hands and surprisingly powerful bite. They are peculiarly immune to metal. Metal simply does not exist for Lava Children. Thus, any metal object that can pass through them without harming them? Huh. And they move through metal without hindrance. Any metal worn by a victim of their attack is ignored for the purposes of computing armor class. What? What a weird creature. Because, like, yeah, it would make sense that they would be able to heat metal, but the idea that metal just, like, doesn't exist for them is bananas. It's cool, but it doesn't have anything to do with them being, like, metallic, or them being lava, right? So, okay. The Lava Child is implied to be... I mean, I think we combine these two monsters. I don't think they need to be separate things, you know? Isn't that weird? That's so bizarre. That's what I love about these old monsters, is they just don't make any goddamn sense. Like, in a lot of cases, they're just wacky. And that's kind of what's fun. So I think we're going to put them under Magman, because I think that's more where I'm leaning in terms of their flavor. But I think Lava Children can be, like, another name for them, right? Okay, so we have a couple of different categories here. I never synthesized the old document that we did with the sword slug and stuff. Description, ancient history. We'll talk about the history and how it breaks down in a little bit. So, customary apologies here. in order to make my overlay work, I have to have the whatchamacallit, the my Google Doc really tiny, so I'm like squinting at it. I can't read it very well, and I'm historically a very prone to typos, so I will probably make typos all over the place that I can't see. If y'all want to shout at me about them, I can try to fix them, but it's not really my priority while we brainstorm. Okay, so what do we think? Like, A, metal does not exist. It's so strange. Yeah, I kind of like that, Castle Red Fox. I think that's sort of how I want to do it. Castle Red Fox suggests I would maybe have their unarmed attacks act like heat metal spell on contact. I think it could have a similar effect, right? Like if a character... It's kind of like if you think about... there's some spell, Shocking Grasp or something like that, that if someone is wearing metal armor, you have advantage. I think you could do a similar thing, right? There could be spectral like to account for the metal not affecting them. Maybe Spirits of Earth to balance a good elemental. Yeah, we have the Oread, which is kind of like a an Earth spirit. The Stone Mother we talked about. So they're basically like dryads for Earth. So I wouldn't want to repeat that idea, but them being spectral is kind of interesting. They could also be just like flame incarnate. But I feel like that's kind of what a fire elemental is. I think I like Joey's idea of them heating metal rather than them necessarily passing through it. You know, I like the idea that like you could kind of get that effect. Like they're not affected by metal because like a metal attack against them heats the metal, right? So they have a heat metal effect. Any like weapon attack made with a metal weapon, or any attack made with a metal weapon, causes it. And it could be, you could lower the power. It wouldn't have to be a full heat metal effect, but if heat metal is like 2d6 or whatever, then this could be 1d6 every time, right? It's like a lesser version of it because it's every time they attack with a metal weapon, a heat metal effect on the weapon. Yeah, I think that's cool. And then similarly, like they have advantage on attacks made against targets in metal armor, right? Kind of like Shocking Grasp, that, or not even advantage, but it's like they deal extra. Yeah, they deal extra damage because it like heats up the armor, right? Extra damage to targets in metal armor. I think that's neat. Extra fire damage. So what are they? I mean, like I like the things I like about them. I like them being like impish fire spirits. I don't think they're really children, obviously. I see the idea of the smile that's like permanently on their face is kind of spooky. I wonder if they have like jack-o'-lantern style faces where like their outer skin is the magma that's cooled, and then they just like have these rictus grins on their face, so it kind of gives them this appearance of these like devilish little children, right? Like their skin is cooled magma, but their faces are devilish jack-o'-lantern grins, right? Like where do they come from? So again, in Undune, in my setting, we don't really have extraplanar Christopher never misses an opportunity to mention his barbarian, which I think is cool. Trying to be boastful. Yes, no, yeah, exactly. But like a monk or a barbarian, yeah, would be great in this situation. You would feel rewarded by choosing one of those classes. That's neat. Jose says, just change the baseline for children. Maybe they reach adulthood. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe they're like incredibly long-lived. You know, I don't even think that the Earth, or at least not the recorded time, isn't 10,000 years long. It's like 4,000. So what's the like? Where do they come from? What's their origin? Are they naturally occurring? It doesn't feel like they are, but we already have mephits and elementals and Jinn, you know, kind of in that stratus. So like, what's the context here? Where do they come from? How are they different? Could they be like the impish nature? I think is cool. Like, are they mephits, like, you know, fire mephits or whatever, that escaped their master, or, you know, were like, ooh, yeah. What if they're like gremlins to Mogwai, right? Oh shoot, hold on. There we go. If a mephit, if a fire mephit, you know, because there's like smoke and magma, is not like properly summoned or properly treated, right? They mutate into lava children. That's cool, right? Like that you have to tend them in a particular way when you summon them, and if you don't, then this is the price, right? And I think there's something about fire. I mean, you could maybe even extrapolate that out and say that there's a version of this for all 4 of the different types of mephit. This is kind of a recurring theme too with like elementals, is that they have kind of an AI feel to them, where it's like these wizards are meddling with forces they don't really understand, which, you know, is classic for magic. But I like, this is another example of like, if you fudge it, if you move it a little bit in the wrong direction, you can get this. Oh, what about like the water weird is a good one for that, right? For the water elemental. So like, it almost would be fun to come up with what are the different. Is that the gargoyle? Oh man, I think we just opened this thing wide up. Is a gargoyle a creature like a yeah, water weirds are like elementals that are bound to specific locations. I think you could do a thing where the water weird is like what happens if you mess up summoning an elemental. A lava child is what happens when you mess up summoning a fire elemental. A gargoyle is what happens if you mess up summoning, or something like that. We get to gargoyles, but like, I like the idea of these like offshoot elemental creatures that's like the warning sign, like, oh, be careful, you know, when you're teaching young wizards how to summon things, this is the thing that they're doing against, right? Oh, that's cool. Castle Red Fox says, what if a mephit has a percentage chance to burst into a lava child upon death? They do have the burst effect. Yeah, that's neat. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's neat. I like the Nephims, which are left with, yeah, that expends itself. I think it's like, yeah, I think there's 2 ways to get it. I like that. Okay, so this is a mephit redesign, but mephit. There's a 1% chance whenever a mephit, or a 10 or whatever, like, dies, a 5% chance maybe, that it becomes a magmin. There's a 5% chance when a fire elemental dies. Maybe it's like a different percentage, right? A magmin. Yeah, I really like that, you guys. That's cool. So, description. They appear as small like I was gonna say, they appear as small lava children, right? I mean, yeah, they basically look like how they're described in the book, right? As childlike elementals. I think, yeah, they scamper about on bare feet. Their hands crooked into claws. So when I do this, I'm just taking little notes. I'm not really trying to write complete sentences. It's just like all the various ideas, right? Their skin is like hardened magma with fire like burning within. Yeah, that's cool. Embers of a bigger fire in form, like small arms and legs, but no fire body. That's kind of neat. I think you could get like the magma is like cracked, you know, and is like revealing bits of them. Like, yeah, as they take damage, Their earthen shells fall away, revealing more and more fire within. Okay, cool. So talking about their history is interesting because it kind of means we have to confront the history of Mephits, right? We haven't really done a Mephit block, at least not as it pertains to Khûm. So when we do this history, for those of you who are new, we have yeah, exactly. The jack-o'-lantern face is like their skin falling off. We have three sort of epochs that we talk about with the history. There's the ancient history, which is like most of Khûm's history, when it was like a glorious dwarven kingdom, and they were at the height of their power and their success, and gold and gems are flowing out of it, right? The Seven Sorrows is a kind of the cataclysm that stirs that kind of kickstarts the plot. You know, these 7 terrible things occur all in 1 year and basically reduce this prosperous kingdom to its knees. The dwarves flee. It's an endless winter. There are dragons and troglodytes in the tunnels. Like every bad thing you can imagine. The volcano in the center of Khûm explodes. Like every terrible thing you can imagine happens in the Seven Sorrows. And then the present day, the dwarves are like slowly coming back and trying to reclaim Khûm after it's like kind of languished for 500 years. So any problem that existed in the Seven Sorrows has only worsened with kind of 500 years of neglect. So those are our 3 periods. Now, what's interesting is that we have talked about the idea of a Mephits are very arcane. It's a construct that a wizard or some other arcane spellcaster, a warlock or a sorcerer, maybe a bard, can create. But dwarves are very adverse to arcane magic culturally. Like there's nothing that prevents them from becoming wizards, but like culturally they kind of view it suspiciously, right? It's cheating. If magic is the power of the gods, and if you are using it, then you are sort of saying that you know better than the gods. So they definitely have some arcane spellcasters, but even like their bards, I think, tap into divine magic rather than arcane magic. They have famously had some spellcasters. There's one like famous wizard, kind of the dwarven Merlin, named Zundakun, who was this sort of controversial Gandalf Stormcrow style figure. But if Mephits are created through arcane magic largely, then what is their relationship here in Khûm if the dwarves didn't really make them? They don't really make arcane creations. There's at least one of the clans that's known for making earth elementals, but I always kind of figured they were the exception. And even then, even in that case, those earth elementals wouldn't be lava children. So unless they're naturally occurring, which like I think kind of goes against what we've said, right? That like they are the consequences of messing up this spell. So we could say that there was a clan of them that did it. Ooh, yeah. There's a hot spring clan. So maybe these Mephits, like steam Mephits, and magma Mephits were used. So I don't know the name of them. We'll just call them Hot Spring Clan for right now. Used fire Mephits, steam and smoke and magma to heat their hot springs. I could even see like one of the dwarven kings was trying to introduce this idea of more magic and more arcane magic into their lives. So I could see Mephits kind of having a Calcifer style relationship where there's like an older form, there's like an outdated now like version of a furnace that uses a Mephit to keep it warm, right? Like this practice extended. Yeah, maybe it's like his name is oh my gosh, I just Havhod? Yeah, Havhod the Hammer introduced Mephits to dwarven culture during his reign. As a means to heat a furnace or a bath. Yeah, too many like accidents allowed. I think that they tried doing it for a while, but they weren't getting it right. They're messing it up, right? Too many accidents, and too many magmen meant the practice fell out of style, except among Hot Spring Clan. Yeah, I like that. Okay, cool. Let's look at the chat. A side effect of dealing with other races and wizards were not about to help with these changes unless they showed the methods to the dwarves. Yeah, for sure. Right, about making a sad story, make them the creation of their prior form dying to save the dwarves. That's interesting. So the question then is the Seven Sorrows, right? Like, so I think, is it the kind of thing where, like, I have a lot of stories right now in Khûm that involve, like, neglect of constructs and elementals. I think the Lith, the monster right above, is basically like so animated statues are pretty common in Khûm among the dwarves. So the idea is that, like, if you don't, like, a Lith is an animated statue that is malfunctioned in some way, right? It might just be overuse, or it might be lack of use, or it could have run out of magical energy. It's kind of like an animatronic that's, like, not functioning anymore, right? Or that's, like, weird and creepy and slowed down. They might be violent, they might not, they might just be strange. So I feel like I have a lot of those kinds of things. We could localize this. Like, if the mephits aren't really a thing anymore, like, maybe every once in a while you might encounter a furnace that's run by one. But, like, I guess my question is, what is the process by which you mess up making a mephit that it becomes a magman, right? Like, what are the Gremlins style rules? You can't feed him after 10, and you can't get him wet, and, like, that kind of a thing. I think it could just be, like, sort of arcane, and that we don't necessarily need to delve into it because it's a relatively minor thing. But my question is, like, would there be more magmans running around now? Like, that's kind of my instinct, that, like, the mephits that Hot Spring Clan used, they're not there to tend them anymore. So any of the mephits that they used to have now turned into magmen. And so, like, the Hot Springs area is kind of overrun with these magmen running around burning everything, right? That's kind of what I'm imagining. That, like, you might run into one, abandoned by their creators. Any mephits still bound to furnaces or forges were freed, or, like, mutated into magmen, and wreaked havoc. I like that, yeah. So now they're just kind of running around. So there's a couple of these holds that have either burned down or been scorched out because these magmans are there. I think they might even have a thing where they can expend their fire. They can expend their fire and need to recharge it. So they might have kept some of these forges lit in order to recharge their flame, right? That's kind of cool. Yeah, let it rest for a time. Don't overuse them. Dwarves might have gotten into the zone of creation and allowed them to be too hot for too long. Yeah, I think what I like about that is that implies that there are lots of different ways you can kind of mess it up, which I think is strong. The notion that you would, like, that the implication there is you maybe shouldn't be doing this. If there are 10 ways that you can turn a mephit into a magman, too much power, not enough power, letting it rest, letting it get too hot, letting it get too cold, like, all of those things, unless it's kept exactly in, like, the Goldilocks zone, it can turn a mephit into a magman, a fire mephit, right? That it's actually harder to make a mephit than it is to make a magman, and I kind of like that because it implies how dangerous this is, and maybe these wizards shouldn't be meddling with that, right? That's neat. So in the present day, those few holds that still have active magmen are blackened and scorched. Everything of value burnt within them. What I like about that too is that if they're in, you know, a dwarven hold, it's presumably stone. You know, there's not a lot to burn. You burn the silks and you burn the tapestries and you burn the workbenches and stuff like that. But after a while, you're out of things to burn. So there's still magmen that are in there running around, but they're like really eager to burn something because it's been however long, right? Like the magmen trapped in these holds are jonesing for something to burn. You know, some of them certainly escaped, but I like the implication that if they're sealed in, that the minute that the PCs come into the dungeon, they're like so eager to go and burn them, right? Like it kind of drove them mad. Great. Okay, so now let's think of 3 adventure hooks that we can do here. So obviously, you know, a hold the characters explore. Is full of bored, crazed magmen, right? I'm trying to think of a way to use it that isn't just it's in a dungeon, look out, right? Like, what are some other kinds of adventures? You know, the party is like, if it's like a Gremlins story, right? Like the party is tasked with delivering a... Oh, my hair's falling out. Let me put my hair back up. The party is tasked with delivering a mephit to a particular place, right? To restart a furnace. Like they get a mephit in a bottle and they have to deliver it somewhere. And it's about keeping it from becoming a magman, right? The characters are tasked... The characters are tasked with delivering a magman. Yeah, exactly. Do you burn is really interesting. Even does it burn, right? Let me put that in there. Does it burn? Does it burn? Does it burn? Does it burn? Cool, I like that. From delivering a mephit in a bottle and must make sure it doesn't become a magman. Okay, what's one other one? I mean, the sabotage angle, right? Like, someone smuggles a magman into another clan's forge. So things are mysteriously burning. There's like chaos, right? Like, but no one knows exactly why it's happening. And it turns out that there's a magman that's like living in, almost like an infestation is living in their furnace. Okay, great. Yeah, Lava Children. We did it. Nice job. Okay, that was UberQ's suggestion. So let's go strike it from the list. That only took us about half an hour. I bet we can get a few more monsters in. So Lava Children off the list. Okay, so next up we're going to do the Gargoyle. Everybody's favorite is a gargoyle. Let's grab this and copy it. I need to do my purple worm. Yeah, in my world, purple worms and umber hulks are the same creature. They're just different forms of the same creature. So we're doing a gargoyle. We gotta scroll all the way up here. Giants, giants, giants. Giant elk, giant eagles. Gale of Dur, gargoyle. So again, let's talk about this. Gargoyle. We have a lot of magic method to help a dwarf that's trying to remake the wisdom of the old ways. Yeah, that's cool. A capture one. We have a lot of stone creatures. Let me see all the different stone creatures that we have, because there are quite a few of them. We have the Chrismal, which is like a little parasite creature. It's like an insect that burrows its way into gems. I've never seen Ghostbusters. I know. But I think like gargoyles look like a lot of stuff. Tao, which is like an awakened earth elemental, right? It's like the genie form of an earth elemental. The Gale of Dur, who we have as these like weird kind of, they're almost like magmen. They're sort of these like stone trickster spirits. They're fae that were created from stone rather than wood or flesh. And they're these weird, like, I know, Jose. Everyone gets on me about Ghostbusters, which is like totally fair. Yeah. I wonder if we change what Gale of Dur are. If they're not fae, if they're not, yeah. We'll might come back to it. Because that actually kind of seems more like a magman to me, but whatever. Yeah, block me. Do it. The Gale of Dur, who are kind of like boulders that they have a lot of weird stuff. Like they can split in half. Whenever they split in half, they lose their memory. They're not malicious. They just like are kind of fun-loving, goofy. They're sort of like Gorons in Zelda. We have stone giants that are kind of secretive and shy, and they like to build dolmens. They stack up stones or make weird monuments, and no one knows why, what their deal is. I mean, I know why, but you don't know why. We have the Lith, which is like was once an animated statue that is now malfunctioning. We have what else? Gray ooze is basically like amorphous stone. We have the Oread, which is like a dryad that is bound to rock and specifically ore. We have, what other kinds of stone creatures do we have? Is that it? I think that might be it. Yes. So there are all different, and then that's in addition to elementals, right? And in addition to like animated statues. So we have all of these different kinds of sort of stone constructs, stone golems and elementals and all of these various things. So my question with the gargoyle is, what is it and why? Why does it exist? Like, how did it come to be? What role does it serve that these other things don't? Because, like, the idea of the guard dog isn't a bad idea. It's kind of what I would normally assume, right? Let's look at what this says. What the because I think they're originally in the monster manual. I think they're actually like native to the elemental plane of Earth, right? Animate stone doesn't really say. Oh, here we go. Shards of Elemental Evil. Ogremok, Prince of Elemental Evil, treads the stony realm. He leaves shards of broken rock in his wake. Imbued with slivers of sentience, these shards thrum with the essence of the Elemental Prince, growing over long years into vaguely humanoid rock formations that resolve at last into the hard, cruel shapes of gargoyles. So they're kind of like gnolls, right? They're like the off-cast of a powerful entity. That doesn't super work for us. They are chaotic evil, so they are deliberately evil in the book, but that doesn't mean that's what we have to do. So I think the Gale of Dur is a better example of a stone creature that, yeah, could be religious guardians of dwarven beliefs. It's kind of interesting because they are intelligent, right? Let's see. Oh, that's interesting, Jose says. I vote for gargoyles being kind of a dwarven kintsugi, where some stone creature is glued with metal into a different shape and loses what it was before, but slivers of memory. That's really fascinating. I worry, though, that gargoyles are going to pop up kind of all over the world. And so if we tie them too specifically to dwarven beliefs exclusively, then that kind of limits us in the future. They could be used for different reasons. Like a gargoyle could be a type of earth elemental, and these gargoyles are specifically religious. Like culturally, they could be religious or sort of kintsugi together, right? But it feels like I'm trying to think how we would extrapolate that idea. Because gargoyles, I mean, I think they could do that. I don't think that would stop them. It's an interesting idea, right? That like a gargoyle is made from different parts, and so it's like seen as being sort of aberrant, right? Oh. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yep. Yep. I got it. Okay. So this isn't the only kind of gargoyle that exists. This is a type of gargoyle. But this is like how they work, I think, in dwarven society. So a dwarf who makes an animated statue, right? Like there's a difference between saying like wouldn't ever give it sentience. They wouldn't ever like try to make it intelligent, right? They would just say, okay, you do this thing, right? It might eventually become a lith where it is like a malfunctioning robot. But I think what a gargoyle is a stone construct made by the Darrow. So the Darrow, in our version of the Darrow, are really interesting, right? So Darrow are basically they're dwarves that have gone mad in the simplest sense, but they're essentially dwarves that have writer's block, like this intense creator's block where they can't build anything and they've lost the ability to make, and it slowly drives them mad. They're utterly depraved, and they try to like jumpstart their creativity by whatever means possible. They're obsessed with children. They're obsessed with these like Rube Goldberg machines. What's scary about Darrow is that it's infectious. If one dwarf sort of goes mad in this way, other dwarves that are near that Darrow or hear them can like plants the seed of doubt in their minds, and they lose confidence. So we've talked about how they build very strange like mechanisms, right? Like weird Rube Goldberg machines and stuff like that. I think that a gargoyle is a Darrow's attempt to make something. So I think we take Jose's idea of it being like made out of weird other statues, right? And that they found a way to like solder them together, and it's granted it sentience, but it's also granted it madness. That like a dwarven gargoyle is like, there are other gargoyles and other ways to do it in the world, but I think it's like an elemental or a construct, an animated statue, like gone crazy, gone mad. Yeah, exactly. Then the alignment is in there too, you know. So yeah, it's kind of like what you're saying, UberQ. It's like an earth elemental that allowed dwarves or other races to shape or change it to a purpose. So they've been made by these Darrow sort of as like, look, I can make a thing, but they can't carve them. They just take the different pieces. If they find broken statues, they will cobble together these like horrible. What it reminds me of Sid in Toy Story, right? It's like that. It's like these ghastly, you know, strange monsters that they might have wings, or they might have horns, and explains like why they all look different, right? There's no uniformity in their appearance. Gargoyle is a stone construct made by the Darrow. They are cobbled together from all manner of statues and sculptures, and then imbued with magic. So I think only a particular... Yeah, I think so, Vaughn. In this case, yes. I do think there are other kinds of gargoyles, but in this case, yes. I think it's... And what I think is interesting, Vaughn, he describes it as it's more like a golem. It's a purpose-built creation. I think it's a purposeless built creation. I think it's made, but they don't know why, right? They're like driven to make something, and they just make this. And the point is that it serves no purpose. It does nothing. Maybe it's like horrible and grotesque and can't move. Like, I think tying it specifically to... Yeah, exactly, Vaughn. Its madness might come from the mixing of purposes, that it doesn't have a reason, and so it like kind of lashes out. Yeah, that's really cool. Only specific Darrow, like like dwarves that were spellcasters in life can create gargoyles. So I think they're rare. I don't think they're that common, right? You're much more likely to encounter an animated statue or something like that, like if you're looking for that kind of a guardian, but they can exist, right? And they're always like associated with the Darrow. They are driven mad by their lack of purpose. Cobbled together from a nightmare of mishmashed stone pieces. Oh, that's kind of all down here. That's the summary. They are wildly disparate in appearance. They are wildly disparate in appearance, resembling gruesome Frankenstein's monsters. Almost like mongrel folk from Curse of Strahd, right? Where it's like a person that has had all these extra parts added or replaced. So historically, the Darrow were interesting because I don't know like when it started or if it has it always been a thing. They've always existed, dwarves that lost their minds for whatever reason, but they were mainly stories to frighten children with. And then during the Seven Sorrows, the number of Darrow greatly increased during the Sorrows. Dwarves unable to create thanks to lack of materials. So as the goods were kind of slowly waning, basically the ores, the veins of ore ran dry during the Seven Sorrows. And so the Darrow were increasing in number as Khûm was kind of sliding towards destruction. And then, of course, now they're far more common than they were. Entire holds have fallen to the sickness and threatened to infect others. So I think similarly, like, they were monsters to frighten dwarven children. You know, I think there was like one case of like a famous Darrow that had built all of these horrible gargoyles. A famous story about a Darrow who constructed like a gargoyle army, right? Largely a myth. As the Darrow increased in number, so too did the gargoyles. But here's what I think is interesting. I don't think that the gargoyles listen to the Darrow. Like, I think once they're made, they're kind of like Driders, you know, the way Driders were sort of portrayed, that like they were once drow, but then they failed the test and they were kind of made into these horrible spider monsters. I think the gargoyles are similar, where they aren't guardians or anything. They might be, right? Yeah, I can't tell you anything, Vaughn. I'm sorry. I won't tell you. But that's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, the Darrow increased in number, so too did the gargoyles. So I don't think that, like, what I think is interesting with the present day is that, like, there are rogue gargoyles that wander the tunnels and halls, like, seeking a purpose and killing indiscriminately. What's interesting too is that, like, this is kind of a redesign thing. Redesign. They lose their, like, remove their oh god, what is it called? False appearance ability. They're very recognizable. Oh, but what I think what you do though is you say that, like, not all gargoyles are animate. That, like, they would make Darrow make some statues that don't animate, and so you might come across like a workshop or like a grove, kind of like a Medusa, right? Like all of these weird creatures, and a lot of them are just statues that have been cobbled together, but one of them is a gargoyle, right? It's like unclear which one is. So you still get that sense of, like, is it going to attack me or is it just a statue, right? And you're never 100% sure. Yeah, that's really cool. They're very different. I think there are other kinds of gargoyles, but I like that this is the, like, the dwarven interpretation of it. Because I don't want to cut off gargoyles from any other context. Like, even if you think about All Hell Yogg, like, Eric's form is sort of a gargoyle, but it's sort of just more of a demon. I don't know, whatever. So what are some hooks? Like a dwarf the characters trust makes a gargoyle. Like, they sort of look at this thing that I made, and it's horrifying, and anyone would see that, it's like, oh god, he's going mad. What are the pieces the gargoyle are made from retain some of their original purpose? The conflicting purposes drives them mad. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yep. I kind of mentioned that, right? Not by a lack of purpose, but by a conflict. Their conflict of purpose. Yeah, exactly. Gargoyle might have 1 wing and 6 arms, or a shield and 2 heads. 2 heads that argue, right? Let's do or 2 heads that argue. Kind of like an Etten, right? Yeah, that's cool. I like the idea of, like, I mean, obviously, you know, the characters encounter a Darrow lair littered with monstrous gargoyles. Ooh, what about, like, while exploring a hold, they keep noticing missing pieces from statues, right? Statues they pass, heralding the approach of a gargoyle. So the threat they pose is definitely combat. Filled with insensate rage and confusion, a gargoyle is a deadly foe. It's a deadly foe that fights unpredictably and to the death. That might be a thing I put in the redesign too. To the death. Maybe the characters know needed parts for the build only to make the gargoyle a little later. And yeah, that, like, they give them some parts. That's cool. More of a frenzy ability, right? They attack with reckless abandon. Even just give them, like, the reckless trait, right? No, I think that's great. Yeah, you're exactly right, Jose, right? That's kind of this one, right? A nest of gargoyles stopping the characters from a chamber filled with Darrow. I don't think that it's lost. I think it's that, like, Vaughn asks, has the knowledge of gargoyle creation been lost? I don't think so. I think the Darrow still know how to do it. I think it's something the Darrow naturally do. You know, I think that they can't help themselves. And I don't even think it's that, like, I think I want to remove this, like, special spellcaster thing. I think it's that, like, they're animated by the Darrow's confusion and terror, right? Like, they are animated by the Darrow's confusion and terror. So, like, a more distressed, panicked Darrow is more likely to make the gargoyle, right? What if a dwarf creator doesn't know that mixing pieces is what makes gargoyles mad? Yeah, it could be. I think that's neat. You might even get, like, a hook that's like an abstract carver. Well, but I think they would also know, right? Like, that would be part of culture, would be them saying, like, that's an aberrant thing. It's like someone with schizophrenia, right? You would make something like that. Why wouldn't you make your own thing? Yeah, let's do that. Let's do, like, an abstract carver, an abstract stone carver. Like, so dabbles in gargoyles? In gargoyles. In gargoylism, right? Like, everyone suspects they're a Darrow. Like, mixing pieces of statues. The hook is that if an NPC dwarf wants to make a gargoyle like times of old, yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't think that a gargoyle serves any purpose. I think it's kind of like making a Frankenstein's monster. You wouldn't want to make one. It was just like a horrible thing that you could do that's like an abomination of stonecraft, because it has no purpose, right? It's this ugly, ungainly thing. And I think it's like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I like that one, Jose. A dwarf creates Darrow as a last-ditch attempt. Or not Darrow, creates gargoyles to defend their hold. or hold, thus turning themselves Darrow. Yeah. Although, can you do that? Does it work that way? I mean, I think that's neat. I don't want to like analyze that way. Yeah, I think it's good. Okay, that's gargoyles. I think it's this kind of gargoyle. I have to think about what they are, but I like the idea that it is in some way a perversion on what an elemental or an animated statue is supposed to be, right? Okay, great. Let's see what else is on the list. Oh, we're going to do rust monsters. Rust monsters, I think, are going to be pretty quick because I have them sort of figured out already, but it's good to get a sense of them. Rust monster is going to go here. Oh, oops. I'll just copy this. So rust monster. Although there's kind of more to do, right? I think they're fundamentally what they are. Rust monsters, like, you know, scampering subterranean insects. Rust monsters feed on alloys and metals. Alloys, metals, and ores. Mixing pieces makes both creator and the created go mad. I think it can, yeah. I think that's cool. I don't think we have to like analyze it too deeply. I like Jose's hit on that someone would do it intentionally. Okay, so let's look at rust monsters. Pachow. Rust monster. So I'm not envisioning I'm going to find much that I don't already know here, but I'm funny they call it dwarves right away. Most dwarves would rather face a squad of orcs that confront a single rust monster. Strange, normally docile creatures corrode ferrous metals, then gobble up the rust they create. They ruin the armor, shields, and weapons of countless adventurers. Underground scavengers. They roam subterranean passages in search of ferrous metals. They ignore creatures not carrying such metals. It smells food at a distance. Rarely found in large numbers, referring to hunt alone or in small groups. They meander along tunnels, moving from cave to cave in their tireless search for ferrous metals to consume. They can be found in close proximity to other subterranean monsters. If they are well treated and well fed, they can also become friendly companions or pets. They're xenomorphs with acid blood. That's troglodytes, remember? Troglodytes are xenomorphs. So, all we know about rust monsters is that in ancient history, the rust plague savaged Khûm. An infestation of rust monsters threatening to bankrupt the kingdom. The dwarves solved this problem alchemically. This problem alchemically, adding a harmless chemical into all their mixes that prevents them from rusting. To all their metals that prevents them from ever rusting. It's like an old problem that they basically like made rust in Khûm extinct. You know, I think that like that knowledge has been lost since. So dwarves outside of Khûm can still have rusted weapons and stuff like that. But in Khûm, rust went extinct. They got rid of it functionally. I think you could still have rust monsters that would go after the ore. But it's because they haven't had a chance to mix in their alchemical solution to it, but they sort of found a way to get rid of rust that prevents metal from ever rusting. So beyond them just being like bugs, you know, I like the notion that they're not violent, right? They're not predatory. Docile and non-predatory rust monsters. Oh, so my parents, or my dad, and my brother-in-law sometimes go like pheasant hunting in like South Dakota, and they talk about how like grouse and pheasants and stuff are really dumb. That like, you know, it's kind of that turkey thing, right? There are certain birds who are just like complete morons that they will like, they'll be hunting and they have their guns and they'll shoot at some pheasants, and there's like 3 pheasants and they kill 2 of them, And the third pheasant will fly up into the air, right, and will then come back down around and land there, and like oblivious to the fact that 2 seconds ago they were shot at, right? Like a bird like a duck, will run and will never come back. But I like the idea. Yeah, they added antioxidants to their allies. There's some kind of a magical thing, right? It prevented it from ever rusting. But I think there's something kind of cool about rust monsters being similarly dumb, right? Like rust monsters are sort of friendly and simple and a menace, but right, like they don't understand that the dwarves don't like them. They don't understand that they're in peril, right? Rust monsters are phenomenally dumb, phenomenally stupid monsters, and tend to follow dwarves around. Again, usually because they have metal armor or tools. They are often met with prejudice, wary that I think here's what's interesting. Like, if the dwarves exterminated rust as a concept, what does that do to the rust monster? I mean, I think it definitely affected their population, but it kind of makes you wonder, like, did they sort of domesticate the rust monster as a result, right? That they like, because I can see them being a problem in the mines, but I think you can't have them have gotten rid of rust entirely without like then not having that have some effect on the rust monster. So either the rust monster almost went extinct, right? Or they were somehow like kept. Like, I think it's more interesting if the dwarves like kept them alive. Yeah, okay. So let's go to history. However, many dwarves, like, there's like a conservation effort, I think, right? The dwarves, this caused rust monster numbers to plummet. Yeah, I think you're exactly right, UberQ. They use them like ore finders for truffle pigs. Yes, Vaughn, rules as written, magic weapons are immune to rusting. And it's, we talked about this idea that magic, when dwarves make a magic sword, it's because they use a particular kind of metal. It's like, that's where it comes in. They don't enchant a blade. It's you make it with a magic metal anyway. Yeah, I think you're right, UberQ. I feel like we've done something similar to that, but I like that idea. I think that's right. I think that like they almost exterminated them, and then they realized that they were useful, and so they domesticated and like sort of conserved them. Yeah, the Chrismal does this, is similar. They're basically like little lice in their larval form. Chrismals burrow into precious gemstones and slowly coat themselves in crystalline armor. They are sometimes used. Most saw Chrismals as pests. Some dwarven clans kept them as pets and used them to locate deposits of precious gemstones. So it's a similar idea. I think they do the same thing with rust monsters. But I think that like dwarven culture, it's less about the utility of it. I like the idea that dwarves kind of view rust monsters sort of as like pugs, right? They're like dopey, cute little beasts that they now see as being harmless, right? They've like defanged the rust monster almost, right? Yeah, Lusterine has magical nature. I love the Shadowrunners always talking about that Lusterine. Like, you remember it more than anybody else. I'd always do this, right? Okay. They, after nearly going extinct... Also, hey, Shadowrunner, I didn't realize you were here. Going extinct. I think you're right. I think there's like there's an element of like, I don't know if they would feel shame for killing a thing, but I think there is an element of pity that they feel, right? Like, the rust monster was domesticated by dwarves, and used to sniff out ores like a truffle pig. They are, I think they're kind of like the kids. Dwarven kids have like stuffed rust monsters, right? They're like the domesticated, like defanged wolf. It's like this thing that used to be really scary, and that by defeating it, right, they have since sort of commodified it almost, right? Yeah, I remember Shadowrunner. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's cute that they would breed them. Yeah, because it's like dog breeding. Like a rust monster is essentially a dwarven dog, right? It's like a show dog. They use them to sniff out ores, and they breed them to like go after different. Yeah, they could be more of regret for not getting their usefulness earlier. Like they thought of them as just like a horrible pest, so they exterminated them, and then they realized kind of too late, or almost too late, that they could have use. Yes, that's a really cool narrative, because like obviously rust monsters have to play some factor into the game, but it was always about like finding what to do beyond just like they're pests. That's like a more interesting, more nuanced take on it. They are bred to sniff out particular ores, and there are rust monster like breeding competitions, right? And like best in show style competitions, right? Best in show style events. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think they're kept as pets, and I think that like they are fed little scraps of metal, right? Like you can get like shavings, and you can get dross and stuff like that, right? I love that you corrected it, and it was still D, P, J, or G. I'm in a position to critique, of course, because let me look at this thing. Look at this. My document is full of them, but okay, yeah, I love that they're treated like pets, right? Yeah, in the finest leather, and like they've got the leashes, you know. Yeah, I love it. You can't have them on chains because they eat the chains. But they're, like, yeah, there's like metal that they specifically don't alchemically treat with the intention of feeding it to rust monsters. Yeah, and again, I love that scope, right? That they've come around on it. So what happened to them during the Seven Sorrows? We have already established rust monsters like living in Horn Hollow in the one adventure that we ran with their little hatchlings and stuff. So we know that they're still around. And I think without dwarves to feed them, they would have continued to exist because they would have just ate the ore. Although the ore kind of went away for a while. You know, I wonder if... Did they go extinct? Oh, yeah. Would have detected intruders that don't have dwarven alloys. That's cool. Yeah, they'd be able to detect them. What do they do? They bark? Like, I think they chitter or something, right? Like, yeah, uh-huh. They would know exactly. Good guards against non-metallic intruders. Yeah, definitely hunger. Like, my instinct is that they went extinct. You know? Yeah, did they start eating something else? Because like if the dwarves left, right? Anything metal that they left behind, they would have the alloy in it. And the ore vanished, right? Oh yeah, the screeching is cool. Yeah, they screech. They screech when alarmed. Ugh. But and so anything the dwarves would have left behind, right? They wouldn't be able to eat. But the ore is gone. So they have nothing else there. Right? Like, I think they maybe went extinct. We've established there's at least one, right? We've encountered one in the one-shot adventure, so they're still there. But I wonder if they basically died out. Yeah. I kind of think that's better, because I think the idea of them, yeah, I think that like they struggled for a while and eventually went extinct. eventually went extinct. Look at how I spelled a while. Look at that. Disgusting. Eventually went extinct with no unalloyed metal to eat, and the ore and the veins of ore dry. They couldn't survive. So I do think that, like, I like the idea that there's, like, some sense of them coming back, you know, because they've tried to escape to the surface. Like, they could have, but there's nothing out there to eat, right? And the one we encountered was, like, burrowed into the unalloyed metals in Horn Hollow. So, like, I don't think they were, like, completely extinct. I think there were, like, handfuls of them here and there, but they're basically extinct, right? They're, like, extremely endangered. Because I think there's something more interesting about dwarves bringing them back. 500 years between the collapse of society and the current expedition. Shadowrunner. 500 years. So I think they're done. You know, maybe there are a few holdouts. Like, one of the rust monsters that y'all fought was, like, one of the last rust monsters. Because I think that's interesting to establish that, like, the dwarves sort of have to bring them back if they want to, right? I just think that's, rather than, like, they turn into something else, we've done that a dozen times. Like, I think at least one species of creature, especially if it's, like, they're cute and popular and the dwarves like them, if they died out, then it's about reintroducing rust monsters. Because they could be really rare, right? If maybe they only lived in Khûm, you know? And they would have been exterminated in other places. So there's maybe only, like, yeah, there are vanishingly few rust monsters left. You know, maybe a dozen or so that managed to survive on what ore is remained. Yes, it is more than a dwarf age. Yeah. So I think there are a few of them that are left, and they're, like, exceptionally rare and exceptionally valuable. What ore remains. And now they're exceptionally rare. I don't think that they exist in other places. I mean, maybe they might have been imported there, but, like, I like the idea that, like, yeah, you know, like, because what's so cool about that is it flips the script on the rust monster, right? That a rust monster in traditional D&D is something to be avoided. They're a pest, they're a vermin, and now they're a prize, right? But they're a prize not because they're valuable, but because they have cultural significance to the dwarves, right? The dwarves would view that as, like, a racehorse or something, right? It's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, Castle Red Fox. Like cicadas? I like them being rare still. But cicadas feel interesting because it feels like, yeah, I can only imagine the elemental plane of Earth where ores are constantly replenished. And that's, ores here are constantly replenished too, right? A prize nest of rust monsters guarded by a gargoyle. Yeah, I like the cicadas thing. I think let's save that for a different monster, because it could be a cool way to justify that. Although, like, the notion of them eating metal almost kind of implies they would do that. Let's save the cicadas. I think it's a neat idea, but I think I prefer the notion that they are almost extinct and they're just holding on to life, and that, like, they become very valuable. I love the notion of the cicada. We'll save it. But I think here, I like flipping the script on it. So, a nest of rust monsters is, ooh, yeah, what if, like, a darrow keeps one as a pet? You know, so then presumably they're, like, guarded by gargoyles. A darrow keeps one as a pet. Something about, like, their eggs, right? The party stumbles across a rust monster. Ooh, that's cool, Vaughn. Yeah. Nest of eggs. a rust monster, like vampire, right? The party encounters, the characters encounter a rust monster vampire. Vampire. That's learned. I don't think they all have. I think like one of them has, right? That's learned to drink blood. Yeah, that's cool. So the threat is impoverishment, which we have in a couple different places. The Gray Ooze does the same thing. Yeah, while a rust monster isn't much of a combatant, they can harm your gear, but are nonetheless very valuable and culturally significant to dwarves. And like the point is that they're really cute, right? Like they don't attack you. They're just very like they have a little antenna, and like you don't want to kill one because they have these cute little faces. Which is funny because like if you look at the picture, they really don't. Like they look horrible. They tried to make them extra spooky, but I just think there's something about a rust monster that it's just too cute to really hurt it. I mean, yeah, look at how scary they tried to make them. You know? Pretty scary. But at the same time, like, I don't know, I still think he's kind of cute. The funny story about the rust monster, y'all might not know this about them, but they are based on a toy. Like a little plastic toy that Gygax had when he was a kid. A lot of the monsters are like that. The Bullet and a couple of other weird ones are based on this one set of toys that I actually had as a kid. I had a little rust monster toy. And that when I first saw a rust monster in the game, I assumed it was based on a real insect and not the other way around, right? Like, so I haven't been back to look in my old toys, but I know somewhere in my house there's a rust monster toy, which to me feels like this great artifact, you know? Yeah, that's cool. They don't have alloyed gear. Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, the classic, right? Like, rust monsters, like starved rust monsters. Oh, you have those too, Shadowrunner? Good for you, man. I always thought that was a cool little Easter egg. Starved rust monsters attack the party and their unalloyed gear. Yeah, they like trip the alarm. Let's maybe phrase it that way. The party trips the alarm by entering a hold with unalloyed gear. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, great. That's the rust monster. We have time for probably one more. The baying of the rust monsters. Let's slip the rust monsters of war. Okay, here's our list. Let's pick one more to do for today. Aboleth, Black Pudding, Cave Bear, Cave Fisher, Chagrin, Dark Mantle, Drogazar, Gargoyle. Oh, we did the Gargoyle. Take that off of there. Gas Spore, Geonid, Nell Beetle, Coatoa, Mephit, Mustard Jelly, Ochre Jelly, Odiug, Paraton, Piercer, Quaggoth, Roper, Spitting Crawler, Tear, Warg, Winterhag, Jorn, or Yak Folk. The first one that I see will be the one we do. The very first one. We're not going to vote. It's just going to be who can type the fastest. This will be the last monster for tonight. Yeah, I think we did some cool stuff. I like the gargoyles. I like the rust monster pets. I think like having the like commodification of them is really neat. And the magmins. I like monsters that have relationships to other monsters, right? That exist in like an ecology. Those are usually the ones I like the most. I like taking monsters that don't have connections and kind of like soldering them together. You know, the Umber Hulk and the Purple Worm are similar in that way, where the Umber Hulk is like the male form of the Purple Worm, and the Purple Worm is the female, right? Because they're similar, like they're at different tiers of power, but yeah. What do we think? What's our last monster? The first person to shout something out. What's it gonna be? I'm trying to think, like, most of these are pretty basic. I'm kind of drawn to some of the weirder ones. Like, I don't know what a Geonid is, or a Nell Beetle. I'm gonna look at the some of these older books and see if I can find some weird stuff that belongs in there. That I should add to the list. The first person to suggest something, though, that's where we're gonna go. Oh, the Akai Arai is really strange. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for y'all. God, some of these monsters are really bizarre. I'm looking at, like, the Algoid. This creature appears as a green humanoid with coarse, rough features. Its appearance is misleading, however, because it's actually a colony of algae, which assembled in this form has developed some mobility and rudimentary intelligence. What is that? What? What a crazy monster. There we go. Roper it is. Let's do the Roper. I think Ropers are interesting because they just don't make any goddamn sense. They're really fun to fight mechanically. I think they're like a fun monster to pitch against the party. Ketchup Jam. I see what you did there. I'm also kind of running out of ooze ideas. Piercer is really bizarre. But let's look at the Roper. Those two seem like they need to be related in some way. But let's do the Roper. The Ropist. Okay. Roper. Here we go. Yeah, Memory Moss is similar. Shadowrunner. Definitely similar. Memory Moss is a little cooler, though. So living in caves and caverns throughout the Underdark, voracious Ropers feast on whatever they can catch and seize. A Roper eats any creature, from Underdark beasts to adventurers in their gear. Roper has the appearance of a stalagmite or a stalactite, which often allows it to attack with surprise. The creature can move slowly using thousands of sticky cilia beneath its base. Ugh. It creeps up cave walls and along stone ceilings, finding the best position from which to attack. It is, yeah, it's an evolved, mature form of a Piercer. Okay, so the Piercer and the Roper are the same. So, yeah, I mean, it seems pretty basic. Piercer / Roper. I don't think I know very much about a Piercer. I think it just falls and spears you, right? So, Piercer and a Roper. We were just talking about how we like to blend monsters together. Ooh, Odiugs are cool too. We will get there next time, Joey, unfortunately. Has an evolved, mature form of Piercer. It's a hard word to spell, no worries. Which shares its rock-like appearance and hunting tactics. Roper can hold still for long hours, shutting its single eye to look like nothing more than a mundane formation of rock. Creatures that come too close are surprised when that eye snaps open and sticky tendrils shoot out to seize them. The Roper then makes the horrible guttural sounds as it reels in its struggling victims, drawing them, it bites them, blah, 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 can digest anything. With the exception of platinum gemstones and magic items, which can sometimes be retrieved from the creature's gizzard after death. That's cool. The digestive juices are also valuable. Has 6 nubs set along its body, through which it exudes sticky tendrils that bond to whatever they touch. They're adhesive. Each tendril sends out hair-like growths that penetrate a creature's flesh and sap its strength, so the victim can only struggle weakly as the Roper reels them in. If a tendril is cut through or broken, the Roper produces a new one to replace it. Yeah, you got it, Castle Red Fox. That's how you spell it. Odiug. Interesting. Okay. So let's look at the Piercer. They have kind of a John Carpenter, like, teeth and eyes thing. That's pretty spooky. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Piercer. The Piercer. Come on. This is riveting, right? As I flip through this book. Clinging to the ceilings and large subterranean passages, Piercers blend in perfectly with natural rock, dropping in silence to impale unsuspecting foes on the ground below. It's the larval form of a Roper. Two creatures often attack in tandem. A rock-like shell encases a Piercer's body, giving the look and texture of a stalactite. Patient hunters, they can see. They also respond to noise and heat, waiting for living creatures to pass beneath them, then falling to attack. That misses its chance to kill, it must make the slow way back up to the ceiling. So they drop once, and they have to go back up, so they're kind of vulnerable after that. Yeah, okay. So Vaughn asks, is the roper abomination or magical creation? I think it's an abomination. I think it's like an aberrant creature. A roper feels Yogg-like to me. You know, I think technically then by that definition it would be a fiend. But it feels like a creature that like is influenced by Yogg, right? It's got the eye and the tendrils. It has just enough of sort of a Cthulhuoid feel, but it's also underground, which again is like where kind of Yogg's influence comes from. So that's my instinct. I know I try to avoid doing too many. Vaughn says they sound like a magically created guardian. I don't know. They're so weird that to me, like, yeah, they are big, right? So let's see. They're so aberrant and monstrous. It doesn't feel like something that someone would make. You know? Maybe a crazy person. Okay, ropers and piercers are ambush predators. Yeah, it is a monstrosity, technically. But I think, and that's what I would probably do it mechanically as. But I would say that by Ondune rules, so the way that Yogg works, right, the sort of like elder evil that's imprisoned in the earth, and it's kind of the big bad of most of the campaigns. They any creature that has been influenced by Yogg, because there are no other planes, it's just this one, is considered a fiend. So if you're a fiend or a devil, yeah, a devil is a creature that Yogg has specifically created, whereas a demon is a creature that has been sort of warped and mutated by Yogg's presence. So by that logic, if that's what we're going with the Piercer and the Roper, which is kind of where I'm leaning right now. I mean, I can be convinced, but that's like my instinct because they're just so Cthulhuoid. They would technically be. I mean, they're technically monstrosities, but like in the story, they would be considered demons that disguise themselves as stalactites and stalagmites, stalactites and stalagmites to attack their prey. Yeah, you're exactly right, Chandler. It's kind of like where they lump everything else. Yeah, they are medium-sized. They're big. Imagine getting speared by that. Like it falling 30 feet and hitting you in the head. My God. How much damage does that deal? It feels like it should be enough. There are other evils than Yogg. Yes, Hadar. But Hadar exists in another reality. Yogg is the only elder evil here. Interesting. To me, it feels like if it's underground, that it would have to be Yogg related, right? Because Yogg is imprisoned in the earth. Like, Illithids, for example, Mind Flayers are creations of other entities. Not all, I guess Yogg could have a Mind Flayer, but they tend to be, like, influence from other realms creeping in. So I think the Piercer and the Roper are Yogg. And I think it's to kind of lean into one of your ideas, Vaughn. I think it's something that occurs naturally, right? Naturally in the deep places of the earth. It's like if there's too much sort of Yogg like influence, you can get these ropers that like bud and grow like sponges or coral. But I also think that someone could enact a ritual to turn a stalactite into a roper. So if you're like a Yogg cultist or something like that, right, they might be used. Ropers could be strategically positioned in places to have this effect. Let's see, how do I describe this? An unnaturally occurring, yeah, the original Outsiders, exactly. An unnaturally occurring aberration. A roper is formed from slivers of Yogg's essence that taint the stone deep beneath the earth. They reproduce by budding like a sponge or coral reef, creating piercers that eventually grow into full-blown ropers. Maybe we say a fun thing is that, like, because, like, the eye is so specific to me. It's like one eye, right? Which feels very Sauron. What if we make a point that, like, Yogg can see through the eyes of any roper on the planet? Right? Any roper or piercer on Dune. They're like, that's more what they are. They're like its eyes in the surface world, right? Yeah, they're like spies. That's interesting. The roper is a spy more than a monster and only attacks if it thinks its cover is blown. Well, but a purple worm is so humongous, right? A purple worm is like massive. I don't feel like it would be a corrupted purple worm or an Umber Hulk. They feel very different monsters to me. The idea of a corrupted purple worm is interesting, though. I don't know if that's a roper, but that's a neat idea. I like the idea that the eye is the big thing here with the roper, and then everything else is just kind of dressing on top of it. That Yogg has, like, found ways to... Oh, yeah, so maybe they're like, they tend to appear around fault lines and places where earthquakes have rent the earth, have rent the stone, because that allows Yogg to creep its influence up. Sometimes Yogg cultists. Sometimes cultists can create ropers from ordinary ordinary stalactites with a ritual. Maybe they awaken them. Yeah, can awaken ropers. Yeah, that's neat. Okay. So I don't think... Oh, yeah, that's cool. So the beholders are interesting on Dune because there's only one. There's a beholder. And then this is what's so crazy about beholders. I don't know if we've established that they are, if that Yogg created them or not, but I definitely think there could be a connection because if we're dealing with that eye, right? Like, that definitely makes sense to me. If the way the beholders work, and I love this comes straight out of Xanathar's, is that there's one beholder, and it is a beholder up until the point where it dreams of a more powerful beholder that could kill it. Because, again, they're full of paranoia. And so it does that, and then it imagines another beholder, and then that beholder kills it, and that becomes the new beholder. Like, it imagines it, and it manifests. It's bonkers. It's in the rules. It's a real thing, and I think it's so silly, but I love it. So I like that notion then that there aren't multiple beholders. There's just the one beholder. So you don't really have death tyrants then or anything like that on Dune. You might have spectators, I guess. But yeah, it could be... I'm trying to think what the connection would be, because I never wanted to, like, nail down where the beholder came from, but I definitely feel like there is some, like, intangible connection. There's some intangible connection between the two. Between ropers and beholders. I like that. There's, like, a similarity in their, like, eyes, similar eyes or tongues or something, right? That like a magical zoologist would look at them and say they must be related, but it's unclear how, right? Or why that would happen. So I think in ancient history, there were no ropers in historical Khûm, right? Like, or very few, right? There were very few. I think it's no. Yeah, I think there were none. There were no ropers in the history of it. Like, only around the Sorrows. The Sorrows. And the earthquakes. Earthquakes that shook Khûm. Khûm before... are prayed into being? That's kind of neat. That shook Khûm before the volcano exploded. Did the first ropers creep in? So I think that they're now kind of across the world in other places, but I think that, like, they're not super well understood, right? I don't think it's very clear that a roper is, like, they don't have, like, a storied history. They're a relatively new entrant into kind of the ecology of the Underdark, such as it is. I like that. They feel newer, and they feel like a new challenge that the dwarves aren't prepared to deal with when they come back. Ropers are now prevalent in the deep places of Khûm. Watching and reporting on the movements of dwarves. Oh yeah, what if they're like, because we have these troglodytes, right? Like, ooh, that's cool, Vaughn. Yep. The ritual involves carving an eye into a stalactite. Yes, that's very good. Nice. A roper. They're almost like so the troglodytes are running around in Khûm at this time, and they are, again, I think, sort of xenomorphs, like reavers and xenomorphs, right? Like, they're specifically designed to kill dwarves, and they're kind of running free range in the tunnels. So I like the idea that, like, a roper would almost be like the eye in the sky to a troglodyte. So, like, if you see a roper, you have to try to kill it fast enough, because it will certainly summon troglodytes to it, right? Like, a roper, if not dispatched quickly enough, summons troglodytes. Even a piercer, right? Like, could do the same thing. Let's see. Because, again, what I like about that is that, like, it's spying for Yogg, but Yogg is so huge and vast. Like, how could it possibly care about what one eye sees? Cultists of Yogg transform stalactites near the hold into ropers to spy. It's another one. Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah, how long has a roper piercer been following you? That's neat. Oh yeah, they're like a party is followed by a roper. Can they spot the moving stalactites, right? Like, that's cool. I think the threat is surveillance, right? A roper is a deadly combatant, yes. But what's worse is the information it can relay to other, more sinister forces. Yeah, cool. I love that. Nice job. Okay, we got 15 minutes. Let's do another one. Let's bang out another one. Castle Red Fox requested the Odiug. Let's do the Odiug. So roper. Boom. So the Odiug, I think we have a little bit figured out, just on concept. I don't think I have a entry for the Odiug yet, but that can change right now. Otiug. So in order to figure out the Otyugh, or Otyugh, or whatever. Oh yeah, right. There were 4 east of. Oh, that's cool because it could run away too. Yeah, that's interesting, Shadowrunner. So let's go to the Carrion Crawler and talk about the Carrion Crawler really briefly. Voracious scavengers, carrion crawlers are a blight on dwarven society for centuries, thwarting all attempts to expunge them. Kind of the anti-rust monster, right? They just couldn't get rid of them. Slimy creatures from deep within the earth, the carrion crawler is virtually an unkillable scavenger, dwelling in midden heaps and breeding at a prodigious rate. While originally thought to be a blessing, a carrion crawler in a dwarven midden heap eventually spells disaster, as it'll quickly overwhelm whatever food supply the dwarves provide and come searching for more. Whole holes are occasionally closed and condemned thanks to carrion crawler infection. So they're roaches, right? Giant, monstrous roaches. So the idea was that... I don't think I have it in here. For centuries, dwarves struggled with means to combat the carrion crawler, even breeding Otyugh as a means to exterminate them. So the idea was that the Otyugh was a means to like it's the Australia thing. Like they introduced another monster. It's like the technological advance on the carrion crawler. They used to have carrion crawlers in their midden heaps. I thought it was good, but they eventually sort of got too many of them, so they introduced the Otyugh as a means to eat carrion crawlers. So that's kind of where we're at with the Otyugh, but we can get a little bit more developed on that if we want as well. So, Otyugh. A strange garbage monster. Otyughs were introduced to dwarven midden heaps as a means to fight carrion crawler infestations. So let's see how they're described, because I think that they're in the book. I think they're intelligent, which feels a little weird to me, but that doesn't mean we couldn't do it. It would definitely contrast them against the carrion crawlers a little more, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, they have 6 intelligence, and they can speak. They speak their own language. It's a grotesque, bulbous creature, born along on 3 sturdy legs. Its eyes and nose set along a vine-like stalk, blah, blah, blah. It buries itself under mounds of offal and carrion, leaving only its sensory stalk exposed. When an edible creature happens by, the Otyugh's tentacles erupt from the filth and grab hold of it, right? I'm really disease factories and try not to eat people. Dwellers in darkness. They hate light. They dwell in stagnant swamps, scum-filled ponds. It doesn't say anything about where they come from. I like the idea of it being kind of a that they're rare, but I think that they're like I'm thinking of God, Little Shop of Horrors, right? That like massive aberrant creatures of unknown origin. Otyughs are grotesque, dwellers in garbage, dwellers in awful, that the dwarves introduced with no real knowledge of where they came from. I think it's like one dwarven, like in the history, when carrion crawlers were threatening to overtake a hold, one dwarf like purchased a strange egg which hatched into an Otyugh, and he threw away. And they threw into the garbage. This became when the Otyugh ate the carrion crawlers. It became popular. It became a popular way to fight the infestation. Maybe like the creature disease could be new, add to Khûm, and drawn by the squalor of the Darrow. Oh, that could be it too. I kind of liked the idea of them introducing it, but you might not be wrong there. Like the squalor, I think maybe the squalor of the Darrow have led them out of their. They used to just live in the midden heaps, but they've had to leave since because the dwarves aren't feeding them anymore, right? Like, so now they kind of wander Khûm, and that's weird. But like, my question is like, what do they? Yeah. So then, when the dwarves stopped feeding them, that would be Seven Sorrows. When the dwarves stopped feeding the Odiug, they left their middens and sought food elsewhere. Where they especially like to follow Darrow. I think that they're like fundamentally like parasitic. They're fundamentally scavengers. Scavengers who don't fight unless they absolutely must. Yeah, the telepathy is weird. Right? Like, what is that about? What a strange monster. Because again, obviously it's an aberration. It's like meant to be very weird and scary and John Carpenter, but like sometimes like monsters like that like I just like it's the lava child thing where like why does metal pass through them? What does that have to do with their theme? Like it feels like it's poor design, but sometimes that chaos is what's good, right? Like can magically transmit simple messages and images to any creature within 120 feet of it that can understand a language. Oh my god, it is Audrey 2. Right? Feed me. Yeah. Okay. So it's intelligent, and they got it from this weird place, and they started breeding them, and then they ended up in everybody's garbages, right? But it's kind of like you have to sort of do the what's the at what cost kind of a thing, right? Like it gets rid of the carrion crawlers, but now you have this thing that's constantly requiring to be fed, and it just keeps growing and growing. Yeah. I like the idea that like they are limitedly telepathic. And make promises to people who offer to feed them. They're like all because like what's interesting is that if they lived in garbage, like in like midden heaps, and they're able to like they can't read minds, I suppose, right? I keep opening and closing this because I like the idea of them just like constantly growing and growing and growing and like the weird like again introducing rabbits and then dingoes and stuff like that. Like what's the end game there? Traditionally it's for luring people in. I kind of like it that it's almost like more negotiation, right? Like let me see how it works one more time. Sorry, I feel like I should just leave this open. Odiug orc, here we go. Can transmit simple images and messages to creatures within 120 feet of it. It doesn't allow the receiving creature to telepathically respond. So I think we could maybe do a little change here. Redesign. Allow the telepathy to read surface thoughts within a certain radius. Because the way Audrey 2 works in Little Shop of Horrors is that it senses what you want, right? And then it's somehow able to make those things come true. I don't think the Odiug can make those things come true, but I think it can sense what you want, and I think it can, like... I love the idea of, like, the garbage... This is getting really weird, but the garbage monster, like, blackmailing dwarves that, like, it wants to be fed. Yeah, the Neo-Odiug. It wants to be fed, and so it asks you to feed it, and if you refuse, then it, like, learns secrets from the hold and then offers to tell you those secrets if you feed it, right? It becomes this devil's bargain. If refused, the Odiug learns secrets from the hold and shows you images or quotes from other people as payment for food. That it's like, it's smart. That's why it's different than a carrion crawler. It's intelligent. The question is like, what's the end game on that, right? Like, you just keep feeding it and keep feeding it. Like, I kind of think that's enough. I think that it like manipulates holds and causes this chaos, but it's too useful, right? No one wants to get rid of it. Yeah, I think that's fine. I like playing with this notion of its intelligence, right? Okay, so let's come up with 3 hooks, and then we're going to call it for tonight. I think its threat is manipulation. Manipulation. An Odiug in combat is a deadly enemy. But it is also a cunning psychic manipulator. Whose machinations have... Yeah, it could be a good spy for Yogg too, right? I like the idea that I think the Odiug is like the Mind Flayer. I think the Odiug is from somewhere else, right? Rather than being for Yogg. Maybe there are Odiugs that do work for Yogg, but I think originally it came from somewhere. Because again, you want that Audrey 2 like from space thing, and no one knows why it wants this, right? Have wrecked many holds politics. This is a weird one, I gotta be honest. So let's see. Let's come up with what are some good hooks here, right? The characters meet an Odiug, meet a half-starved Odiug who promises them secrets in exchange for food, right? For food. Yeah, and then bottom slide goes to the various rust monsters. Yeah, they're cute. A Darrow band has an Odiug guardian / disposal. Let's get one more weird one, right? An Odiug. Ooh, larval form of an Elder Brain? Yeah, maybe. I don't know if they're necessarily connected to a Mind Flayer, but I like the idea that they're from another reality. Something about, like, growing too big or, like a starved Odiug or something like that, right? Odiug. Otyug or whatever, however else you pronounce it. I'm not sure what this last one is. Otyug. I'm looking here. Sometimes they serve people, right? We kind of have that with what was I gonna say? Yeah, down in the mines. Otyug. Oh yeah, like well, we already have it, like half starved. I think it's like I want one that's like grown too huge. You know, an Otyug has grown fat and like trapped by feasting too much. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I think my brain's getting tired. That's 5 monsters. Did we do 5 or just 4? We did Magman, Gargoyles, Rust monsters. Yeah, we did 5. Roper and Odiug. Look at that. 5 monsters. That's great. I'm so proud of us, y'all. I'm so proud of us. Have I been like over here the whole time? That's infuriating. I gotta remember to be on this side. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and helping us out. That's 5 monsters we did today. I'm pretty impressed. We will unfortunately be off next week because I got a client Sunday night. I got to run an adventure for some peeps. So I won't be here on Sunday, but I will probably try to find a time this week to do another adventure design stream. Oh, that's better. Yep, Vaughn's got it. That's better. Thank you, Vaughn. You have to go acquire an Odiug egg or like a larva or something like that. Yeah. To combat a carrion crawler infection or infestation. The characters must acquire an Odiug spore. Yeah, I think it's weirder than an egg, right? Like, yeah, that's cool. Okay, cool. I dig it. Or it could even be that it's not a spore. They have to like convince an Odiug to help them out, right? Or convince an Odiug to help them. Okay, great. So I will be gone. Next Sunday I'll be busy, unfortunately, so I won't be able to do a stream, another world-building stream next week. But 2 weeks from now, we're going to go back to True Throne, and we're going to do the one that I've been looking forward to, which is the history of it, right? Like, but so we'll be off next week. I will probably try to find a time to do a adventure prep stream sometime this week. We had fun last time, and I want to see if we can get another one in. But great. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. We had a nice chat today. Thanks, Christopher, Shadowner, UberQ, Castle Red Fox. It's great to see you. Thanks to Jose as well for being here. Yeah, this was a really nice, successful one. I find these monster ones are some of my favorites. They get good engagement, and it's not quite as esoteric as sometimes the cultural stuff is. Great. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. Thanks for all your help. I gotta do the Dwarven farewell now. Kevazad, which is I'm not working in Dwarven. Kevazad, Otavari, and I'll see you next time. Oh, outro.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm.